we hear them report on the connections in Hollywood that they have. Sila po ang Nepales couple. And finally, it's about time. Ruben Nepales, Mr. FC himself, is out with his own book. Hello and welcome to Kababayan LA. Congratulations.
Thank you, Janelle. I'm so proud to have my first book. Thank you very much for having me.
Alam mo, I'm so proud of you also, Ruben. You know, remember we were talking before, palagi, you always write columns and ang daling i-compile to put into a book. What took so long?
Well, first of all, ikaw sa mga unang nagsabi sa akin to put out the book, so thank you very much. Kasi busy then, and then finally there was this somebody named Ninette Galang, who's from UST, where I came from. She really didn't stop until I got a book deal, so I'm very grateful to Ninette Galang from University of Santo Tomas.
And speaking of UST, you also went to the Philippines just recently to receive an award, the highest ever accorded to graduates of UST. Congratulations.
Yes, I was very fortunate to receive the total award, which is the highest alumni award from the University of Santo Tomas. So I'm very pleased and very humbled.
Going places and achieving a lot of things. Ruben Nepales, also a hardworking guy, Ruben. And you mentioned no time. So how did you sit down and pick kung ano sa mga collections mo ng essays and columns ang isasama sa libro?
Well, ang unang idea ko is to do a mixture of Hollywood stars and then my film pieces. But sabi ng Anvil, which published the book, they wanted to start with the films first. So I thought it was going to be easy. They don't just pick up what I published already, but then you have to update it too, and then you have to select and everything. So it took almost a year to come up with the book.
When you look at those, alam ko may feeling of reminiscing, of nostalgia when you look at the previous columns that you wrote, diba?
No.
Updating everything. Speaking of nostalgia and going back, can you remember your first ever big interview?
Well, for Hollywood interviews, si Mel Gibson for The Patriot. Coincidentally, ang kanyang producer, one of the producers, is Dean Devlin, who's a Filipino-American. So among the Filipino-Americans, si Dean Devlin was one of my very first big interviews.
What was it like talking to somebody like Dean Devlin? And at the time, ikaw, you know, big star to eh. Ako kasi, I admit, when I interview stars, minsan, kinakabahan ako, naninervyos ako. Ikaw ba ganun din?
Yeah, of course, kasi parang, wow, si Mel Gibson ito, right? And this was at his peak. So for The Patriot, so yeah, you get impressed. Oh, wow, I'm staring at this guy, person to person, face to face. So
right.
that was nice.
What about Dean Devlin? How is it like, you know, finding a kababayan in Hollywood at the time na siya established and you were, I suppose, starting?
Starting, yeah. There was a feeling of pride kasi wow, parang Filipino-American ito, and he's one of the producers of a big movie. So I was very proud of him.
And yung Filipino connection, kailan yun nagsimula?
Actually, joke yan kasi with one of my colleagues na American, kasi napansin niya I was very fond of asking Hollywood stars for a Filipino connection question, which he was the one who coined it, or the two of us coined it. Kasi gusto kong malaman may somehow Filipino connection to make it interesting to sa mga readers, di ba? So, nagsimula yon, and then you get surprised kasi like Jeremy Irons would suddenly remember yung scent ng sampaguita, our national flower, or Helen Mirren suddenly talking about her brother who lived in the Philippines.
Wow.
Mga ganun. So that's how Filipino connection started.
Has there ever been a point where sasabihin mo Filipinos or Philippines and people be like, ano yon? Is that, do they know right away that, you know, where the Philippines is, what Philippines is?
In general, alam naman nila kung saan ang Philippines. Pero kasi maraming point of references like kay Oliver Stone, for example, in Platoon. So he made movies there. Pero ang mga nakagulat si Oscar-winning actor na si Forrest Whitaker. Na he was there during Platoon at the height of the People Power Revolution, the very first one. Bigla na lang Forrest was talking about taking shelter in Balik-Balik.
Oh,
for somebody like him to remember Balik-Balik, that was fun.
Right. But going back, Balik-Balik, going back to the book, it's all about films now, making a name for themselves in Hollywood.
Yes.
We have a lot. So what is your memorable film interview?
Among the most memorable is with Cristeta Pasha Comerford. She's the executive chef sa White House, as you know. So it was my very first time to go to the White House. So that was really fun because for us to interview her, in the old family dining room, which was just steps away from the state dining room, where they had dinners for the world leaders in the past and in the present. So that was something.
Akala ko memorable kasi yung pinakain sa inyo. Did she cook for you?
Well, Chris did take us to on a tour. Dinala kami sa kitchen. And at one point, we saw the First Lady, Michelle Obama. So she waved at us. So that was an extra treat.
I'm sure. And speaking of fun, funniest interviews naman.
Well, there are 4. It's a tie. Kasi si Bessie Badilla, who's an actress and a producer, she calls herself Reina ng mga Bading.
Okay.
She's such a fun person. And si Alec Mapa, I asked him, he's a Filipino-American actor, kung may mga ideas siya for soap. I mean, a comedy sitcom. Sabi niya, he's thinking of Bionic Lola.
Bionic Lola. Okay, so Reina ng mga Bading at Bionic Lola. Si
Ang
Bessie?
Bionic Lola daw, typical of our very beloved Lolas, is able to go to, attend masses in 8 churches all at the same time.
Oo nga, no? Parang.
Yeah.
But you know, tie yan eh. 4-way ties. So we have 2 more to talk about, plus a lot of other memorable interviews from the book. Get your copy. He's having a book launch. We're going to be giving you the details, right about now. Please join us. That will be on Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. sa Carla's Cafe at CBS Studios. And we'll talk about more about that when we return on the show. Don't go away.